happening in like the next level down and the next level down and next level down. So things to assure yourselves about the resilience of the supply chain, etc. I mean, digital technology plays a huge role in terms of assessing risk. So I mean, everywhere that you touch, digital is enabling the energy industry in terms of.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Actionable ESG Talk series brought to you by AKFI, Actionable Knowledge Foundational Institute, the world's first nonprofit industry consortium committed to bridging the gap between ESG, sustainability, and digital transformation. My name is Isabella. I am the co-host here with Manuel, the other co-host, also the executive director at the AKFI. And our special guest today, hi Siri, thank you for waving to us. Um, Hi, thank you for joining us. It's such a pleasure to have you here today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be with you, Isabella and Manuel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sri, for
Thanks to
taking our invitation as well. Thank
And thanks to this talk series, we get to connect with great minds to together discuss the current state and the future state of ESG, sustainability, and digital transformation. Suri is a global supply chain leader with over 22 years of expertise in the supply chain strategy and technology. Alongside her commitment to sustainability, Suri drives transformation digital outcomes at the enterprise scale. Suri is also the expert voice. She possesses the expertise and actively shares her thoughts on platforms such as LinkedIn and other industry conferences. She was recently recognized as the top community voice in negotiation. Thank you very much, Suri. Very happy to have you here again. To start our conversation, please share with us your thoughts in the current trends of sustainability and ESG in the energy industry.
Yeah, thank you, Isabella, for that kind introduction. I think it's the energy industry is really at an inflection point, right? On the one hand, you have the pressure to decarbonize our supply chains, our operations, and everything that energy does. Also, at the same time, the energy industry is at the forefront of providing the low carbon solutions that we desperately need for it to be able to decarbonize, or whether it's wind or solar or hydrogen, sustainable aviation fuels, research on EV batteries. I mean, the energy industry is at the forefront of it. So if I think about ESG in the energy industry, I think it's two-pronged. One is how do we reduce the carbon footprint of what we deliver to our customers? And secondly, how do we be at the leading edge of innovation and newer solutions that are needed for the world to get to, meet the Paris climate agreements and things like that. So yeah, I think it's two-front really, and especially from a sustainability perspective, I think there's a lot happening in energy. I mean, on all fronts, whether it's finding ways to reduce the amount of materials it's used, or whether it's reusing, catalyst regeneration, things like that, or in recycling, for example, using recycled plastics to produce lower carbon solutions and more sustainable chemicals, as an example. So I mean, I think we're really touching all aspects of ESG, things like worker welfare, advocating for living wage, being at the forefront of DEI as well. Yeah, so there's a lot going on. I guess we could talk for multiple hours about all aspects of energy. Yeah,
you. We'll gladly keep you going for multiple hours, but we'll have to do it in installments.
exactly.
So, I picked up on something because we call it the energy industry, but it's also a source of prime materials for plastics and many other things. I think highways also are made of some part of of this industry. But in the interest of time, I'll move on to a different question a little bit. So, what's the role of the digital transformation, the digitalization process in the industry? How does it support really this sustainability transformation that you mentioned, reducing carbon footprint, making recyclable materials. And if you can give us also a little bit of insight of the supply chain, not only on the main company that we know by brand.
Sure. So this is my fundamental belief, and a lot of energy leaders share that. I think we cannot get anywhere close to delivering what we need to do without digital. I mean, the old ways of working is simply not good enough, right? For example, if you really wanted to, for example, measure your emissions, right, from your own operations, I'm taking a very simplistic example. You would need kind of sensors that tell you what your actual emissions are, what is the profile of those emissions, and how can you kind of then abate that somehow. Yeah, so I mean, that's a very, very simple example. I can think about areas like safety. Safety is a very big form. I mean, in the whole ESG equation, safety is huge, right? And our operations are extremely sensitive to safety incidents, whether it's process safety, human safety, whatever it is. So think about something like drones, right? I mean, if you had like a refinery and there are like spaces where you really cannot enter and you don't know what's going on, you could actually fly a drone over it, get cameras to take click pictures, and somebody could be analyzing it with data and understanding what's going on there without having to actually go anywhere near that equipment. Predictive maintenance, knowing exactly when something could go wrong, implementation of digital twins so that you can operate these large platforms and structures without a lot of people. I mean, that's really reducing safety exposure, for example. So that's one thing. I mean, closer home to the supply chain, for example, one of the big things is, using AI and technology for things like control towers, having end-to-end visibility of your supply chain, using the available AI technology to understand what's going on deeper in your supply chain. So is someone, let's say, who your main suppliers are, but how do you know what's happening in like the next level down and the next level down and next level down? So things to assure yourselves about the resilience of the supply chain, etc. Digital technology plays a huge role in terms of assessing risk. So I mean, everywhere that you touch, digital is enabling the energy industry in terms of its transformation and ESG. Yeah.
Very, very persuasive image. And I don't know if you can tell us how long the supply chains, how many companies, small, big, and mid-size, you experience.
Wow.
There are in the thousands.
This is a question we always get, right? I mean, if I look at our own company supply chain, I think anytime you count 30,000 to 40,000 direct suppliers, right? I mean, because think about the scale of operations. We're a global company, operations in many countries. Clearly, we touch many areas of the supply chain. So that's just the first layer. Now, for each of those layers, you can start to multiply it by a factor of 2 or 3, and you start to see the scale of the supply chains that we touch. So yeah, it's really massive. And think about it. We buy everything from, say, hard hats, safety PPE equipment, to highly sensitive equipment like compressors, and even now electrolyzers for hydrogen. So pipe, steel. I mean, it's so vast. It's difficult to explain literally everything that we touch. But yeah, the scale is really massive. Yeah.
I'm afraid to ask the next question because I'm asking you to, give us the 3 sort of top of mind challenges to report on this supply chain. As you know, especially the European community is putting in place now requirements to report by starting next year.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you even manage conceptually to get to the top 3 challenges?
Yeah, so you asked a really good question, right? I mean, so first one is, I think the regulatory landscape is clearly evolving, right? I mean, so yeah, we have different regulations in Europe. I think different in the Americas, different in every company. So I think if you have a global company and global regulations, I think you always need to make sure that you're sensitive and you're complying to the highest standard, I guess. Yeah, because clearly in terms of regulations, what happens in one geography starts to impact other geographies as well, right? So simply keeping pace with everything that's happening in the regulatory front is already a huge challenge, right? I mean, so that's one, right? Knowing and staying ahead of regulation. The second one is because of the fact that our supply chains are so large, we deal with all varieties of companies, right? There are clearly some that have invested in their capability to report. We have a better view of what their ESG data is, and we're able to have good conversations about that. But then there's also suppliers who we may be working with a medium-sized enterprise, right? Or even for instance, we do a lot of business with small businesses, right? I mean, so their capability clearly is a little bit different. So we have to figure out what is the right amount of rigor that you put into each of this reporting, and how do you help your supply chain to become capable of understanding their own impact so that they can report back to you. So that's something that you have to really educate your supply chain on what's needed, and how can we best do that. And I think, frankly, the other thing that is also probably needed, but it's not there, is I think every company is demanding its own reporting, and everything is a little bit different from the other. So if you think about a supplier that's doing work with, say, 7 or 10, 15 companies, then if you put yourself in their shoes, and every time you report, you've got to make that little change so that you can comply with that company's requirement. I think that's causing stress in the supply chain. Yeah. So coming to some type of an industry a type of a standard reporting is I think very far away. To take a lot of dialogue to come to something like that. But I think that is also something our suppliers are facing. To be honest, yeah.
Oh, you're pointing definitely to three key areas, starting with dialogue of suppliers, the ability to work together on the new topic of ESG reporting and sustainability, which is quite new, if not to say totally new.
Mm-hmm.
The second point you brought also definitely the data and the size of the suppliers, right? The small medium businesses. It sounds almost like an education process and the homologation process. And last but not least, you also mentioned the regulatory framework, and I always define sustainability starting, with compliance. Compliance is always there. It was always there, and then you build on sustainability strategy for your company and then for the supply. So, do you have maybe a case study in mind, an example? I'm sure you have too many, but anything comes to your mind?
There's a lot of case studies, actually. So one thing that I'm a believer in learning. So I think one of the case studies that I really like is what the FMCG industry is doing. I mean, there are two leading examples there. So one is Unilever's program, the Sustainable Living Program, as they call it. I think it started in 2010, and I think it's still running. And it's very impressive in terms of their focus areas, and also how it's linked to their strategy. But also their ability to collaborate with the rest of their supply chain, right? I mean, I think I read some numbers which are pretty astounding. I think the products that were part of this sustainable program actually grew something like 46% faster than the rest of the products in their portfolio. And I think in terms of revenue growth, these products drove more than 75% of their revenue. So it's a classic, and it's been running since 2010, right? I mean, it's still alive. I mean, if you go to Unilever's website, and you can still find how they're improving on that. And I think the ability to engage with, a whole plethora of the supply chain, bring them all together and learn from it is a fantastic case study. And it's got everything in it in terms of priority, in terms of linkage to business strategy, in terms of longevity, stakeholder value. I mean, a lot of it. The second example also from kind of, the consumer industry is Walmart. I think they have a very public thing called their gigaton project, where they say that we're going to take a gigaton of emissions out, and then they actually publicly display where they are. Suppliers could sign up and go towards that. So that's another example. And I cite these examples because I think one thing is cross industry learning, right? I think every industry has a lot to learn from other industries. The energy industry is at the forefront of things like safety, making sure that no harm is done, processes, engineering, etc. And the consumer industry is really famous for its agility, right? And their ability to really take the pulse of the consumer and respond to that. So I think for me, I always look for examples in areas like, really B2C or automotive and things like that, so that you can be inspired to learn. And I think these two examples really stand out for me in terms of really where I can learn a lot. Yeah.
And I think you touch on almost daily topic of discussion. Is equal to sustainability, is equal profitability. You already mentioned the fact that it's part of strategy, and hopefully the strategies of companies are towards profitability.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we won't have their product.
No, I think consumer preferences are going to demand that. I don't know of any industry that's immune to the shifting consumer preferences. I mean, whether it's in terms of attracting talent or whether it's in terms of actually making a brand for yourself. Everywhere, I think companies that are committed to ESG. I think there was a recent study in the Wall Street Journal, I think published it maybe 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, where they actually did an analysis of how the stock price performed of companies that showed real commitment to sustainability versus others. And clearly, companies showing making progress in ESG were really getting rewarded in the stock market as well. So yeah, I think it's not. It is something that has to be taken at the heart of the business strategy. Really, yeah.
And actually, it's connected also to the financial risk, insurance risk. We'll have in this series. We'll talk more about risk. We'll probably talk about some of the top insurers and their risk management and how ESG plays a role. We started with energy industry and energy companies, but the clean energy seems to be now everywhere on the front pages, right? How to produce clean energy, how to consume clean energy, how to transport clean energy. Do you see a combination between the digitalization, the use of AI in the production of or the extraction and production of clean energy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a classic example is, as grids become more decarbonized, you're going to have like all those variations in the grid, right? Clearly, you're going to have solar production when the sun is up, and then what happens in terms of and then you're going to have wind in certain cases, and the type of energy mix that's coming into the grid is going to call for different solutions, including AI, to be able to manage that properly. I mean, that's a very present example that we're all dealing with. So how do you kind of manage all this energy mix that's coming? Yeah. So in terms of the consumption of clean energy, in terms of production, I think again you see that AI is everywhere. For example, wind turbine maintenance, right? I mean, think about it. You have all these massive structures in the middle of nowhere that need maintenance, and how do you figure out kind of when they need to be maintained, and if the wind turbine is up, that's when it can produce. So I think AI has a big role to play in terms of the maintenance of these structures. Again, that's a very simplistic example that you can take. Now, coming to more deeper topics, whether it's in terms of materials research, to try and see if your batteries can store more energy, or even things like designing new electrolyzers, etc. You need a lot of research and understanding, and there AI and research is going to be crucial to be able to advance our ability to find more and solutions quickly, and bring these solutions to scale faster. So the use of simulation, all those areas where digital clearly plays a key role. Yeah, and then of course, in terms of the bread and butter supply chain rates and all of these issues, planning, sourcing, and making all of this will all have to be digitally enabled, so that we get a more efficient supply chain. I mean, the reason for this kind of efficiency is you have to make sure that your new energy sources are competitive to existing sources. That means that the cost of producing that energy has to come down, which means everything from the capital to the speed at which you can scale, everything has to be made more efficient. And digital is clearly the enabler for all of that. Yeah.
Thank you for giving a sort of a hyper kind of view of the industry. And I think you mentioned a few things that probably are not so commonly associated with the current energy industry, like clean energy produced with wind turbines or solar, as well as producing materials for batteries, for EVs, for plastics that are recyclable and so on. So I just want to make sure that this is not lost to our audience, right? Because we definitely depend on the success of the energy industry to progress. And maybe I'll turn a little bit to the future, and I'll ask maybe Isabella to help us with the next question.
Hi, Sri. So what would be your advice to those people who want to pursue a career in such industry, supply chain, sustainability, the future of digital transformation?
Yeah. So, I mean, clearly it depends. So if you're a new college grad trying to start out, the first thing is to learn as much as you can, take the relevant courses, but also marry that with industry exposure. So if colleges have internship programs, etc., I think, put your hand up, pursue them, because it's nothing like combining your what you learn in the classroom with what's happening in the industry, right? The second one is, I think, there is a lot of knowledge available in, by MOOC. I think I mean, if you just look into, platforms like Coursera or edX, I think there is so many courses available to upskill yourself on things like AI, or even sustainability, etc. So take advantage of those things so that you can understand, what's happening. Definitely, I think, be curious and understand how can that be applied to your own setting. That's always the best form of learning. When you hear like AI or generative AI, imagine the work that you're doing now and see how it can be applied, and maybe propose solutions, or bring up like POCs. I think many organizations today have a lot of forums for things like DIY. I know Shell has a very big DIY program, and we have digital ninja programs, directed at people who want to upskill themselves and produce solutions. So take advantage of areas like that. Try to join some industry forums, where you can. I think there are many, many supply chain forums like ACSM, SIP. There are numerous forums where you can just go and network and listen to people who are at the top of this game. So, I mean, the thing is, put your learner mindset on and be curious. Yeah. And because the thing is so changing so rapidly, that's the only way that you can keep ahead. Yeah.
And
There's a saying somewhere, right? AI will not take your job, but a human that knows how to use AI will take your job. So it's better to be the human that understands AI and that can bridge that human AI interface. Yeah.
in your community work, do you come across mentoring young people, just graduate, mentoring them toward the continuous learning that you mentioned, and also mentoring them toward joining the energy industry? We all run on energy.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I think, where in Shell, I actively mentor, many young people. I think I was even part of a reverse mentoring program that I got mentored, and we were told how to be good leaders from the eyes of, somebody that's just entering the industry. But also, I think many of these forums that I mentioned, like these institutions, will have mentoring programs. So put your hand up for that. And the other thing too, forums like LinkedIn or your own forum like Actionably. I mean, the thing is, the mentor is only a few steps away. If you find somebody that's good in their field, I think, try to make an effort. I mean, one, their activity or the knowledge they've already put out in podcasts or YouTube chats would already be good mentoring. But if you're really serious, I think a lot of people today will help either mentor themselves or direct you to someone who will. Yeah. So the thing is to be not afraid to ask. Yeah.
So a lot of discussions went around AI, and maybe before closing, I want to mention that Isabella is also deeply involved. She authored a book about the digital mind of tomorrow, which is focused on AI. Almost or over a year old now, the book has been out. So
That's great, Isabella. It's really lovely. Yeah.
I'm sure that Isabella will have a lot to add. Would like to invite you back for the next opportunity to talk. We are deeply interested in the supply chain, the role of technology. As you know, AKFI is really trying to bridge the gap between digital transformation and IoT, AI, and sustainability and ESG reporting. So this can be really done in real time and done effectively and efficiently.
Yeah, definitely. Looking forward to it. Yeah.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Thank you, Suri. Thank you so much for the conversation and everything you shared. I look forward to seeing more thoughts and ideas from you on LinkedIn as well. We're all very active on there. I think it's a great platform to share your expertise and your voice. And congrats for being a top voice.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I really enjoyed it. Look forward to chatting again. Yeah.
Congrats
Awesome.
from me as well.
And thank you to our audience for taking the time. Make sure you're tuning in every week for a new episode of AKFI's Actionable ESG Talk series, where you can gain new perspective on how to mitigate risk and create value by integrating ESG and digital transformation. Until next week, goodbye for now. Bye, Manuel. Bye, Suri.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Sri. Bye, Isabella. Thank you.